working to pass the Protection Act, which protects Joshua Tree National Park and created Death Valley National Park and all sorts of other wonderful things in the Mojave. But it didn't really increase the life expectancy of the California desert tortoise, because the range is much greater than any protections that we could have made through land protection in California. And I know that to be the case, that I think a lot of us are looking, who have sort of activist tendencies, for a blend of effort that's somewhere between policy and government, and something that can move faster. And that's definitely been my attraction to the corporate realm and the startup realm, because you know, the tortoise is may be steady, really slow. Thinking about this very short time frame to make change on climate change, we're going to need some new arrows in our quiver. Basically, why I'm so excited to be talking about circular thinking, because I think this is really one of the frameworks that have been uncovered fully. I think something that's happening, but it hasn't been described cohesively yet. And I think us collectively working in the space can actually create a narrative that can move us to a new place. So today, let's talk about how those narratives and wrote a book called Punctuated Equilibrium, which evolutionary biologists are quite about. Equilibrium is that moment in time when evolution leaps forward. So very slow. I think small steps towards progress, and then all of a sudden something happens. Sudden, there's no, and you wake up and there's opposable thumbs. It happens like that. And that is in some ways what we have to hope for if we're thinking about the type of progress we need to stop the challenge that we face. And two models to this. One is gradualism, which is the way that most evolution, the Darwinian evolution that we kind of understand, where there are small changes off the main trunk, and then these sort of punk for punctuate equilibrium, these punk-eek moments. And we suggest that what we're trying to kick off right now is a punk-eek moment in terms of economic thinking, to see that there's this reality that we all know and hope for that's happening, and that's the part of the narrative that we want to suggest, not just to leaders, but to consumers and citizens as well, that there is a way that it can happen. It doesn't mean destroying everything about the old, but it's happening, and it's happening fast. Here's just a quick look at the music industry, and who have worked in the music industry. This is not news at all, but as you can see, there was a massive fall in 2002, 2003, as digital and peer-to-peer file sharing came on. I hired of one of the major record labels in the 2002, 2003, right around the peak, to help build a sustainability program, which I thought was great. And I said, okay, good, how can I help you? We have a plan to make our company more sustainable. I said, great, what are you going to do? I said, we make all of our CDs our CD cases out of bamboo. So that's a really interesting. Well, you want to do that? I said, well, because that's green. And if we're green, then people will, that might be happy, it'll be good. And it did science in 2002 say, well, what about digital? Why don't you become the first record company that just gets out of producing hard goods altogether? And never forget, he just looked at me with a sort of cold and steely look and said, they bag my cold day from this building before selling physical goods, which was a thing for in my mind for him to actually kind of throw gauntlet down that was a thing that he wanted to be known for. But and he was fired about 18 months later. What's crazy punctuate equilibrium for companies is that they're kind of to everyone but the company itself. When you think about the industries or people who will be visiting Davos this month, or who we interact with in our own world, facing these same sorts of moments. So, the reason at this point is that when like this is something that's sort of new and radical and something that's coming. But I think it's much more effectively placed as a solution to the business challenges that they're facing, a way to sense those challenges and to reach them in a way that will protect their business, that they don't get the record industry. And many who are, the economy you can adopt or it will crush you. And that's, I wouldn't quite use the words publicly, but certainly that executive from and many people in the music industry would begin to understand that as well. I see coming most quickly is in low value consumer products. This is just one of the hobby horses I shared with some of you before. This is Titan Shave Mate 6-blade razor, which, if you're one of the people who believes that you sometimes, you know what, this morning I need a 4-blade razor, to shave my face. A hard morning, maybe a 5-blade, maybe a 6-blade razor would save life, would make me good going off in the morning today. Clearly there's functional benefit. A 6-blade on a razor is just more resources, more of that 60 billion tons pulling it to try to get competitive advantage. And what's perfectly clear that there's very incremental fit to this. This in some ways or suggest progress we've seen the last 20 years, where we've seen things that are just market driven as opposed to real innovation driven. And having spent 5 years working with Saatchi and Saatchi, we certainly were presented with many of these types of innovations and asked to try to promote them, and frequently under the guise of being green. We constantly rejected them and said, don't bring new unless it's actually really, truly new. This is kind of the great challenge that product manufacturers are stuck in. This is after their punky moment. This is I would say a strong parallel to what the record industry faced. They just don't yet. They don't. The consumers are beginning a flight to quality and durability, and haven't seen that trend yet. But I'll give you a metaphor for where I see this happening already at the beginning of this chain. I worked with extensively Walmart, and this is the world's best-selling plastic fork. And mine, actually, the person who left Walmart to start Yertle with me was in charge of all of their private brands and the sourcing for them. And and a very small innovation to cut out the center of the tong fork. I'm showing a fork here, but basically the fork has a little hole in it. So you basically can grip the fork a little better. Saves about 12% of plastic resin from the past fork. It's before, because the way they re-engineered the fork, saves about 13% of the cost of the fork. So they're able to lower the price of the fork, durable, and do something that was kind of pro-social, because they were really taking out plastic from the supply chain. At the beginning of the move towards the circular economy. Now, of course, it's still a plastic, and it will still be wasted 99% of the time. But it's the beginning of a move towards something that starts what I would call the fall of the ideological wall that I've seen over the last 10, 20 years. 1997, 98, a idea like that, a way to make a better fork that saved money because it was with a sustainability on it, was acted as kind of strange, he thought, something that came from a coast or a college town. Today, it's just kind of not the case. People are to save money as oil prices have soared. People have searched for those things out, and it's no crazy talk to think about that. Gone the next step, and really what I want to focus on from here. Plastic forks to a little more ethereal. When we talk like making a better plastic fork, we're about something that's very specific and practical. I would suggest that to actually achieve the type of action for the circular economy we need to actually change the face of this to something that benefits from understanding now of positive psychology, of kind of human social mode towards in kind of a post-scarcity world. And embracing ideas like gratitude and generosity absolutely at the core of this. And this is a challenge for those of us who spent a lot of time trying to convince corporate types or economic leaders of very practical thoughts. But the face of this circular economy, and why I like it so much better than many of the other terms that are used, it's a bigger concept behind it. That begin to think about this. There's some news that was just released out of the Congo in Kinshasa that bonobos. There were 14 bonobos who were orphaned because of the bushmeat trade, and researchers went there to study their pro-social behavior. They gave a bonobo some food and tried to see who the bonobo would food with. They first gave them a share with. So basically, they were in a cage or in a dwelling, and they were going to open the door and invite another bonobo in. They were testing to see and controlling to see whether they would invite a stranger, a member, or a friend, a playmate in. In more than 80% of the cases, the bonobo would first pull the stranger in and offer the food to the stranger first. In the belief that by giving the food to that stranger, that primate they hadn't yet met, they'd be building a relationship that they could later on for other benefits. Piece of research which I'm happy to forward around. But this wiring towards generosity, this wiring towards sharing, this wiring towards being good is something on our hearts. And it's really been proven out in business context. When I said that we're practical to the ethereal, to the dreamlike, this is the place where we need to kind of channel the bonobo and think about how we can build models that actually have that generosity right at the center of it. The linear economy and this economy because people on this call are some of the pioneers in it. But some of the things in particular that are pro-social or pro-psychological or pro-health, like not needing to own more items. We are seeing incredible changes in customer satisfaction and individual customer satisfaction based on whether they actually have to have a thing all across the world. And to because it connects to YGLs and definitely a kind of a life-acting experience for me was Dharvi in Mumbai. This is the Dharvi slum in Mumbai. 60% of the people in Mumbai live in some sort of slum. The Dharvi slum is perhaps the most famous in the world. The first look at Dharvi, you would say that it's completely functional, but it's actually an incredibly functional informal economy. And I think it has some really important lessons to teach us. I mentioned some of these to some folks, but the more I come back to them and the work that particularly Patel and the Origin Slum Dwellers International is doing with Dharvi and many other slums like it, the more I kind of see that there's some hints here that need to sort of be born to the rest of the world. In the slums, that's wastewater. That bit that's running through is actually the main water line for Mumbai that comes right through it. And the garbage is basically where people dump Mumbai, and rag pickers kind of go through it and build recycling plants for it. My husband is a rickshaw driver. She makes a piece a day. Her family is about 100 rupees a day. And she's able to save through a savings circle about 20 rupees a day, so a full fifth of her salary. And works through a very simple, informal savings circle in her community And they're very small. So think about 20 homes that look much like the ones that I showed in the last picture, where a member of the community comes around and saving from her 20 rupees and saves it collectively. Then that becomes their kind of informal or formal things with banking, etc. And is the framework that this is her passbook. The framework that they use for it, they're simple lessons that I think are of sharing around. The first is belief to save every day, that every person saves every day. So one member of the 20 people comes by, volunteers every day to come by and collect the savings. Absolutely critical to the type of consumer that we're talking about in the circular economy. When we talk about moving from buying something once to have a long-term relationship, we're moving companies and product manufacturers and retailers out of the conversation of it's gone into a lifetime relationship. So saving every day and building long-term relationships is absolutely key. Or belief that they have is to survey your community, that everyone should. And I'm kind of shocked by this, but it was pretty amazing how much transparency they have. They know everyone makes. They know who's sick and who's healthy. They know what people's birthdays are. They know what people are paying in taxes. They know what everyone owns. It's between the neighborhood, because they believe that you can't be a true community and you can't truly save unless you're actually sharing that information. It's absolutely key. And so we're going to need to find a way to get past the kind of trust barriers to share a lot more information about each other. So, for example, the people on this call all are pioneers in the circular economy. All of them I feel a strong affection to because of that. And I like to share lots of information, books, reports, studies, things that I have that would be useful to you. Of course, you don't actually know what I have, so it's very hard for you to find what it is. And there's a good chance that you're buying a lot of things that I have that I'd be happy to give to you. That type of information share is something that we need to get a lot better at and figure out a way to do in a way that's much and interrelated than where we are today. That they have is this idea of spreading the word. Again, very well in a social media world, but it's a view of the savings circle. And the that we need to take to is building this broader sense of sharing circles. And I was deeply inspired by this. I kind of quit my job and started working on it. So I'm a fan. From Slum Dwellers International. She's such a little informal bazaar that's set up where we're basically bringing things that they have that they're either not using. So, for example, some of those old plates are party or wedding items that they're willing to a friend. Jeans is something that we're out of, so they're sharing, and it's just a free bazaar of people who are sharing things with each other. Just a sharing opportunity. I just on this concept of peak stuff. I mentioned earlier that the challenge that we see is not a surfeit of items. What we see clear is that dealing with having too much stuff as opposed to having too little. And much like obesity, for the psychological now of hoarding, is growing and reverse correlates to wealth. So you see here in the UK, household waste per person. You're seeing a trend towards fewer things being brought in. And some of that is because of reduction in packaging. With many UK retailers embracing that. Other is increase in tipping fees and garbage expenses, and increase in recycling things. And other, just some trend that we're beginning to see on this. Too much. We see this somewhat in other areas like fertilizer use as well. Some of this again is the beginning of more organic farming techniques. Some of this is the increased cost of fertilizers. But we're seeing trends across the world. In California and in London, we've reached peak car, where more and more people are choosing to not buy a car, even though they could ever before, because it's just not a fun car. it's expensive, and frequently it's biking or using public transit. This is a hoarder's apartment with a big black in front. And just mention this one more thing on hoarding, because I think it is a trend that we're going to be talking about in the same way that have been talking about the growth of obesity. Fully 1/3 of Americans obesity right now. We don't have good numbers on the level of hoarding in America and other highly developed countries, but it's significant. And the guide for psychological conditions by the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, is now calling hoarding a specific therapist to diagnose it and help people respond to it. These are, just 50 years ago, the challenge in America was much more than mass accumulation of items. And of course, in much of the world, nutrition, or particularly having enough calories to eat, is a much greater challenge. But this type of trend we need to be noticing and seeing that this is a larger and larger challenge. And again, this is not the richest people in the world. This is, or particularly in the most developed countries, it's folks really, it's like the buffet line. They're buying too many things. So kind of a real need here for this to be developing. Massive trend line that we're seeing that in New York for a storage unit. Self-storage has gone up by 1,000% in the last 30 years. It just exploded. My house where we are right now, there's an old Wonder Bread factory, and you may have heard Wonder Bread is an iconic American brand that recently went out of business. But it's a huge factory, used to employ 300 to 400 people, and is now a major self-storage center. So taking jobs and ending them, and instead employing 6 or 7 people running a self-storage center. So just storing our things, which is an incredibly unproductive use of capital, and certainly of natural resources as well. So ultimately, in a very simplistic sense, that this I make to both partners who are companies who are looking to bring sharing economy efforts into their plans, as to people who are just trying to think about how to think about why should I embrace this. The change model that most incumbents see coming, and if you are a board member, you're this is what you feel that ultimately, as society changes, some of these massive changes that I mentioned, from to happiness to the destruction of the environment, as they speed up, the companies that will grow are the innovators, are the ones who really making more changes in the space. Incumbents are the ones who will typically follow. This is lots of research. It's a bit of a cartoon, but it's a simple way to can draw out why people should be concerned and what they should go do right now. I'll ask. And the good news, here is a few companies who obviously we track carefully. One is who has our products. This campaign, not this year, but last year, their Christmas campaign to say don't jacket because you can be a friend because it lasts that long. And this campaign, which was attacked inside the company by its merchants as being just a stupid campaign to run, was led to their best year ever in sales. So it's that actually talking about durability, build an audience that really cares and has customer values for the long term, off. Airbnb, we're all familiar with, is kind of the largest hotel in New York. The average Airbnb host in New York City makes about $10,000 a year. So serious money for people, and usually all know people who are or who are staying in an Airbnb place yourself. But a simple idea that's done a lot. which was just purchased by Avis, is another example. And our third co-founder for YGL, Carl, was on the founding team of Zipcar, and he's an engineer, so building our system. But he likes to talk about when he was at Zipcar, there was instant traction among customers. People really got it, but from the investment community and from others, they just didn't. That seems so obvious today. Car was a crazy idea, or this was perceived as such. And Robin Chase's work, kind of chance, as well as the team there, took it to this conclusion. I'd say maybe you could say it's the beginning. So I hadn't heard Avis, which is one of the largest car companies in the world, bought Zipcar for about $500 million, and is now expanding them across their footprint. It's kind of a tipping point as you begin to see these sort of larger titans taking over the insurgent business that was attacking them. It's a very smart move by Avis, and we're seeing a lot more of that, which is kind of biz proof that the circular economy does work, and golden Denver Hills. What Darvi inspired. This is the homepage for YGL, and if you haven't checked it out, I urge you to. It's YGL.com. It's a sharing marketplace. It's go to share things with your friends. It's tied right into Facebook, and simply can either away. You see the top corner that you have that's extra, and here's some way a pizza maker, some all those sorts of things. Or ask for that you're looking for. So you can say, does anyone have something? So it's a kind of simple model, and about % of the time, your friends who are local to you within a block or two from where you live have exactly what you're trying to go buy at the store or at Amazon.com. But information systems are so poor. We've had information that haven't served our community. We don't really know it. So, what to do is build a new entranceway into retail, new way of thinking about the way that you go out and buy things. So instead of first buying because you're looking for the cheapest price, the idea is to say, hey, do my friends have it? Can I borrow it? I need to own it. Great that I want this thing, but is it something I can borrow? And how do I buy something that's durable so that I have a life after me? So, for example, we see this is one of our most moved items right now, and it's live wear something for 3 to 6 months. When you get a little older, it could be a year or two in the first 10 years of life, but it moves very quickly. And those very quickly get moved into kind of recycling or last use opportunities like Goodwill, Salvation Army, or in a worst case scenario, trash. If at the top of the chain have many more turns of utility at the beginning, we not only save lots of resources from a natural resource standpoint, but we save money. And it's a way of kind of getting on top of the natural level of consumption while building a pretty robust compared to the kind of instant business that we have. And just a point on this, the being that leads to economy in retail right now is this move from transaction-based relationships to customer value relationships. So, for years, companies like Walmart and Amazon have been competing on price. We try to find the cheapest glasses, and the items are identical. It's the lowest possible, most acceptable quality, and compete on price. It's a terrible way of competing because they're constantly cutting their margins and just basically trying to get something cheap at the front of the store and pay for something expensive back at the store, which is the concept of loss leaders. The customer as a long-term value, you can begin to do lots of different things. And Amazon, for example, has done things like, for example, give away free shipping, which is a way to actually build customer value over a long time. Amazon Prime members, so you get free shipping and free movies, and you pay them about $80 a year for that. You spend about $1,200 a year with Amazon and make about 30 orders. If you're a normal customer of Amazon, you'll spend about $200 a year. So the get is for all you're getting, they get a much more loyal customer, and the value is much longer. And their economy efforts, think about this bar and thinking about these other things, they sometimes exist at the way of major retail or commercial opportunities, because people want to find ways to be loss leaders in ways that don't lose money. So, yeah, or a good store, and maybe buy a bat or a glove because free one from your friend, or you find out about it. But eventually buy one, or someone will need to buy one. And when you do, that store is the one who helps kind of provide you the offers and the deals. But what YGL is, we launched in San Francisco a month ago. Friday, grew to about 7,500 members, which is really wonderful. And our big news is that we're launching in New York in the third week of February. So after this, any ideas of people or organizations or ideas that we can do to promote this in New York, I really need them. And February, we're going to be launching much more broadly. So share that with you. Okay, just a couple things. I think I'm running time. I don't actually have a clock in front of me, but one on YGL that gets our computer printers. We see that, and just think, everyone on this call has an extra computer printer somewhere. People get computer printers for free when they buy new computers. They get passed them by friends. They somehow exist. So everyone has an extra one they want to give away, it turns out. Become a junkyard for some computer printers. We just noticed this. We work on some ways to get them recycled, but what we see is that the reason everyone has an extra one is because the drivers don't get updated and the inks are not standardized. Computer printer makers enjoy this because they make a lot of money make their money on selling the printer and the ink. So by having this model, they benefit right now. But there's a great example for disruption here for a computer printer maker to sell printing as a service as opposed to as a box. Because as we begin to see this, as we sort of set up marketplaces that begin to see where things get wasted, those things become more apparent. To note to all the people who have an extra printer, who put it up and telling them about this and asking their help, and on their self-organizing to reach out to Canon to try to get them to change their behaviors. This we actually use the type of consistency towards product activism, and I see much more of that in days to come. Things I think they're actually kind of key lessons: saving every day, surveying, and spread the word. And just end here. Contact information on my Twitter. Please feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to talk about this or contribute in any way that I can. And I couldn't be more excited about this arena, and I just really to join us, and look forward to any. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. We have quite a few questions, and you are free to send additional questions to me during the Q&A session here. Start by this one, and I guess you can answer it if you can and want to. So, how do you create a business model to support the infrastructure needed for circular and sharing projects? So, if YGL is free to use, how can you support the programming servers, etc.?
Yeah, so YGL will be free right now, everything is free on it. We'll make money through two ways. One is through services around the exchange. So we launched delivery in San Francisco that's been quite popular. We're working with product manufacturers on a longer frame, on longer warranties, and basically letting the manufacturer have a relationship with our item after they sell it the first time, which is pretty important to them. We actually have someone interested in working with us on that. We also will function as a marketplace once you get out of the Friends network. So just like dinner party, you bring $20, or 20. You bring a nice bottle of wine, and similarly, friends. There's direct exchange of cash. It should just be a gift economy. When you go to friends, so it's friends or a more distant need, cash exchange, and we'll take a small cut. So, for example, if you read a surfboard, your friends don't have a surfboard, we'll find you one on the network and offer to someone and say, hey, look, you were going to give this away to your friends. Would you sell it for $250? And we would take a small cut of that. So the way we advertise this is through manufacturers and retailers who are trying to exist in the space and through a marketplace.
Okay, interesting. So I guess with more distant friends, moral hazard is a problem. And so how do we ensure that people that we share things with take care of them? And here is an example for Airbnb. They have a big issue with the trashing of an apartment. Yeah,
it's interesting. It's super interesting. I mean, that we've been successful so far is that we have a non-anonymous trusted network, and all Facebook's problems, one of its real strengths is that it's real density on it. We have a lot of people who say, hey, Yerdle, because it's not like Craigslist where I don't know who that person is. It's not like Free where I don't know who those people are. Identity is important, and we basically really allow people to maintain that and keep a very small sharing circle should they wish. Now, that we shouldn't do this stuff. We in general, people advocates of the circular economy. I mean, it turns out that your chances of getting killed by using Craigslist are small. People are kind of awesome and good, and they want to help each other, and even strangers, people we haven't met yet, are awesome as well. When I mentioned this idea of believing in generosity, embracing it, it kind of, we have this sort of delicate balance where we're going to explain, show trust. We're going to demonstrate that and allow someone to be as tight and narrow as possible, while finding ways to open it up and to encourage people to trust people who never have met but might live across the street, never have met but may have gone to the same school as them. They may have met but might like the same type of music as them. But that we can build sharing connections that establish trust and build a kind of a more resilient, connected community.
Interesting. A comment coming from someone who's the president of a neighborhood homeowners association with 238 homes. That a lot of the people in the association buy yard equipment, for example, store it in garages instead of sharing. So a platform like Yerdle or something similar would if you want to share instead of having your own equipment.
Yeah, it comes really quickly. So that's our out right now is a set of groups and affinities, so that you can more tightly connect with folks who are not your Facebook friends, who you want to share with. So, for example, we could all of us could choose to share with folks who are in the YGL Facebook group. Would be a really simple way to open anything up. Now, hey, I'm on Mower. I may not be able to get that to Sweden, but there certainly are books that I'd be happy to send. And the truth is that we're probably kind of a transit network the way that all of the YGLs travel right now. So things pretty quickly.
Yeah. So, question on scaling. So, someone here that I've renovated my home recently, and I can't see leasing or sharing beating the comfort of having all main tools available in my basement. And same car, can't see sharing beat the comfort of having the car right outside my house, unless the car and the tools arrive at my home whenever I want to, in some auto driving, take over the car, for example. I agree that this type of very features to get the stuff to your home is required for those models to really scale, or do you see some other solution?
I mean, for the person asked the question, the place I would start for you is that with the things that are kind of further from your circle. So, core of your circle, your laptop computer, use it every day. That would be a terrible thing to share. Because, you put it down for an hour, someone borrows it, you need it right now. Exactly when you need it, but you need it when you need it. But further out, think about adventure sports or, for example, we see a lot of kite surfing things come up because as much as people, there have been about 5 kite surfing training kites. So you surf, you use the training kite, and then you've learned, so you don't need it anymore. Something that you would be happy to borrow and not own, opposed to have always in your house. Think about, like I just shared out, I have a pasta maker. I have never used it. I use it, and I'm happy that my friend Marla is using it now, and she's making me pasta too, so I'll enjoy that. So there that you know we store and we pay to store that we don't use frequently. Good point. The sweet spot on sharing things are things that have a high value cost and have a low utility, that have a low, they're not used frequently. The sharing that we're seeing right now is giveaways. So think about after you modeled your house, how many extra screws, pieces of wood, exotic tools, things that you had extra, books on remodeling, that extra that you could have helped a friend with and given. We help with that a lot. That seems about 90% of what we're doing. So for example, let's say you have a pneumatic press, something that's that you're not going to use frequently, but you needed for the remodel, you loan through the system. So again, for every person, people, a lot of our younger users, they're 18, 19, they don't own anything, or they've literally put almost everything up because they're just happy with that way. And for some men who are a bit older, we are a little more possessive. But God bless the ones, and they're coming up, which is going to be great.
A common great example, I just spent $100 on a ski outfit for my son, and if I could borrow one that fits would be great, since he would only use it once and will outgrow before next ski season. So, yeah. One maybe tricky one here. So do you think that this concept of sharing will be less necessary once cradle-to-cradle production becomes mainstream, if it ever does?
Will become less necessary when cradle-to-cradle production becomes less mainstream. No, I don't think so. I think actually, and Bill Gunna is advising, has been helping us on developing our approach in these areas. The thing about some cradle products is that they should be made with much more expensive materials. And for example, Bill believes that babies really shouldn't be touching plastic. They should be off of plastic as much as possible. But to do some of this is expensive. A $1,200 or $1,400 stroller. Okay, as long as the financing mechanism is in place and you're just using the stroller for as long as you need it, because you only need a stroller for 2 years. And if you paid $1,400 for a stroller and you get $1,200 for that stroller, why would you buy a $300 cheap plastic one? Actually costs more to use during that time. To get rid of it at the end. So I think what we're going to see is higher quality goods with lifetime warranties and manufacturers who stand behind them, and platforms like YGL being the mechanism to share and move those back and forth between people. So this is just where we're kind of eBay, and those ones are not set up for the sort of lifetime relationships that we need to help facilitate.
Okay, so let's do a few macro questions before we wrap up here. So the first one, there's a debate now growing about the impact of the sharing economy on jobs and GDP. Contribute to GDP if it replaces consumption of a new good. And increased utilization of goods and assets definitely contribute to quality of life in a country, but not to GDP. So what's your take on this? Maybe from a policy perspective, what's required to give the sharing economy enough policy and attention?
The truth is, I think this is a great question. I've kind of brushed it aside in the past, and I'm hearing it more and more. So I think it's something that pastors should sit down and kind of create a deeper policy paper on, because it's coming up more. And I was in India last month because the ban against foreign direct investment in the retail sector has been lowered in India, and many Indian companies are more progressive, looking for ways to do higher value consumerism sort of higher efficiency consumer purchasing that isn't totally destructive to kind of the Indian model and way of life. And as we were talking about YGL as a way of helping to do that, there were several people who made it real clear, like, look, we just need to consume as many cheap things as possible. We just need people to be working, doing cheap manufacture. We need jobs. Let's do that. Now, a bit of a craziness to this argument, right? Because, we know that you riding public transportation isn't attributive to GDP, but you being in a car crash is, because that creates a job for someone fixing your car. And I think we want to buy into that same sort of craziness in this space. Value of hiring people to do services instead of machines to crank out cheap natural resource driven products is a value for the economy. And then servicing, the repair, the delivery, the customer service, the services with much higher employment are the things that come out of a sharing economy. People need, for every zip car, right? Someone needs to fuel the car and move place to place and repair the car. It may not be putting me into a very central $12,000 check that gets written, but employing people and spending more dollars more productively in payroll taxes, etc., to do it. So it's a really simple answer, but I think we need to go down and kind of demonstrate that how these are both pro-employment and in the end positive for the tax base as well.
And just came in on the zip car. Doesn't car sharing really increase driving and hence has a negative sustainability impact as it makes car readily available to people that would otherwise use public transportation?
I think that I honestly don't. I have to say I don't ask Carl Tashian, but I haven't seen any data on it. My view is that it's sort of like the person who's trying to make sure I always have that power drill available when I'm remodeling my house. There are many who are willing to give up their car because the zip car will always be available if there's a problem. It's that last resort. My car much, but I need to know that if there was an emergency, if there was a flood, I could get a car and go somewhere. That's what this is for.
Okay, let's do a fun one here. So do you think we are from a truly circular economy for consumer products such as printers? And is biomass enough, or do we need the government policy change to push this? I guess like technology.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I just as I know we're wrapping up soon, I do really want to invite you to help us think this through. We've kind of thrown ourselves into your role, somewhat, I guess some people, but idealistic, and we believe that we can, if working together with really good, smart people, we can figure this out collectively, and not just in the U.S., but on a global basis. So I invite you to come help figure out how we can take this platform and grow it in your area, try it out with your homeowners group, test it in the garage, and help us figure out, so we can figure out the answers together. So the email address, and please try. We do need your help as we grow this thing. Do policy or is consumer activism enough? I think we're going to need both. So there's 3 steps. We need consumer activism now to identify, look, we need to fix home printers. We need a corporate leader, so we need a company, it could be Ken, could be another's, says, okay, I'm going to be the leader in this. And then once they take advantage, then they will help us pass the policy to basically protect their advantage. So, we've done this in other areas where basically it's the first company that does take back well, push all the rest of the companies to do it because it becomes their competitive advantage. So I think the stage it'll go. And, what I want to find is, a dozen more examples like that where it's just the business model and it can be increased and enhanced through circular economy thinking and through some of this type of activism.
Okay, so on behalf of Peter Lacey and myself and David Rosenberg and the rest of the task force team, I'd like to thank Adam for a great presentation. I think it was truly inspiring. I think, Adam, you obviously have your heart in the right place. I think, I feel this presentation has really proven that you can do doing good. So thanks for that. And then
thanks everyone.
Task force session session will take place in Davos in a few weeks, so I know I'll meet a few of you there. And please relate if you need more practical information regarding this session. And lastly, the more 2013 speakers and summer will be soon released, so stay tuned for that. Okay, thanks, and goodbye.
Bye.